Okay, so you wanted to go deep on this whole Orok thing.
Mm-hmm.
And wow, when you sent in these sources, I got to say I was intrigued.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got this AI chat bot, Grok, you know the one, from XAI.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's been all over the place.
It really has, like everyone's talking about it. But then you've also got all this SCP Foundation stuff, and then out of nowhere, bam, we've got some real-world ethnography.
It is a fascinating mix, isn't it?
It really is. Like, at first glance, you wouldn't think these things go together, but I have a feeling there might be some weird connections here.
I think you might be right about that.
My first question, though, is are we talking about the actual people called Aurochs, or is this something else?
Ah, that is the question, isn't it?
It is. So to start things off, let's talk about this Grok thing. It's cutting-edge tech, so that's going to be fun.
Yeah, let's do it.
You've probably heard about it on X, right?
Oh, yeah. It's hard to miss. Honestly, Elon Musk is always talking about it.
Seriously. So for anyone who hasn't been glued to X24/7, Grok is this AI chatbot from XAI.
Right. And the thing is, it's designed to learn in real time.
Which is wild.
It is. It's not just like a set of code or whatever. It's constantly evolving, taking in new information.
Well, so what's the difference between that and something like ChatGPT or Google's Gemini?
Well, it's that live data feed, you see. It's always plugged in, always learning. That makes it super powerful.
So it's like having a research assistant that's also kind of psychic?
Pretty much, yeah.
That is so cool. And, okay, this might be a stretch,
Yeah.
but do you think of what I'm thinking? This whole always learning, always evolving thing.
Go on.
It kind of reminds me of the other Orok we're going to talk about.
Ah, you're talking about the SCP stuff now.
I am. We're about to jump from super advanced AI to, well, buckle up because things are about to get weird.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So hit me with it.
Hmm.
What's the deal with Orok in the SCP world?
Okay, so first things first, we got to lay down some groundwork for anyone who's not familiar with the SCP Foundation. It's basically this fictional organization dedicated to containing and studying the stuff that's like totally out there. We're talking things that break the laws of nature, you know?
Yeah, it's like a mix of cosmic horror and super serious scientific reports. It can be pretty disturbing, but then it also feels kind of plausible sometimes.
Exactly. So where does Orok fit into all of this? Well, in SCP lore, Orok is officially known as SCP-24084.
Catchy.
Right. And he's a Clabbergar, which is basically like a high-ranking lieutenant. He serves this super powerful entity named Ion.
And Ion's a big deal in sarcasm, right? Like, that's a whole belief system within the SCP universe.
It is. It's all about like pushing the boundaries of what humans can do,
Yeah.
transcending our limits.
Through pain and suffering, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yeah, usually it can get pretty intense. One of the sources you sent in actually had this quote, "Power is made from the pain of the fragile. Here weakness dies, here strength is born."
Wow, okay, that is intense, even for the SCP Foundation.
Right. So how does Orok embody all of this? Well, his origin story is actually pretty interesting. He starts out as this enslaved war chief, crazy strong even back then, but he's forced to fight for this Daiva matriarch.
Hold on, Deva. Remind me what those are again.
Basically, think of them as like super powerful beings in SCP lore, like an advanced alien race, but way more into cruelty.
Okay, so Orok is basically a gladiator for these cosmic jerks.
Pretty much. But then Ion shows up, and Orok makes a choice. Instead of sticking with his Daiva enslaver, he pledges his allegiance to Ion, turns on his former master in this brutal display of power. There's this one line that really sticks out. It talks about Orok's runes of bondage, setting his starved soul aflame.
Yeah, that's powerful.
It is, right? Like, it makes you realize he was yearning for something more. This hunger for power that went way beyond just physical strength.
So he goes from enslaved warrior to Ion's right-hand man.
Right.
What happens next? Does he just wreck everything?
Pretty much, yeah. Things escalate quickly. There's this whole war between Ion's followers and the Mechanites.
Or
Another faction in the SCP universe. All about technology and order. Total opposites of Ion's crew.
Gotcha. So Orok is basically their champion in this cosmic war.
Exactly. And he is tearing through his enemy like something out of a heavy metal album cover.
Okay, but I'm guessing it doesn't end well for him. Like, he gets contained by the Foundation eventually, right?
You're right. Despite all that power, he eventually gets defeated, ends up buried under what would eventually become Moscow, basically brain dead, but not totally gone.
Ooh, that is interesting. So what happens next?
Well, there are two possible outcomes described in the source material. Both have huge implications for the SCP world.
Okay, I'm hooked. Lay it on me.
So in one scenario, it's called In Memoria Aditum. Ion makes a big comeback, and Orok might rejoin him.
Oh, no.
Yeah, considering their history and their whole thing with power, that reunion could be bad news for everyone.
Understatement of the century.
But the other possibility, no return, is totally different. Orok wakes up, but he doesn't go back to Ion. He chooses a different path. Ends up working with the now dissolved Foundation, actually, which has transformed into this new organization called Vanguard.
Whoa, hold on. He teams up with the good guys.
Yeah, and get this, he even devours this malevolent deity named Hendrik.
He eats a god. Okay, this just got even more interesting. So he goes from being this feared warrior to joining the Foundation. What made him switch sides like that?
It's a good question, right? It makes you think about power. Is it always destructive, or can it be used for good? Maybe Orok decided he'd had enough of the chaos.
It's like there are two Oroks battling it out inside him. The brutal warrior and the potential hero.
Exactly. And that internal struggle is what makes his story so compelling. In No Return, he's not just following orders anymore. He's making his own choices, confronting his past actions, and ultimately trying to make things right.
Okay, that is quite a redemption arc. But what kind of good is he doing? It's hard to picture someone who fought alongside a god suddenly turning into Mr. Nice Guy.
Well, according to what we've got, he plays a key role in containing some pretty dangerous anomalies. For example, there's this reality-bending painting called VNP 6521. Orok helps people who have been affected by it. And he even works with this humanoid anomaly called VNP 4494 to stop some jerk from abusing that same painting.
So he's not just smashing things anymore. He's actually helping people.
Yep. And he even earns the respect of Lucretia Popescu. She was a slave of the Black Lodge, this criminal organization that was exploiting Orok while he was basically comatose.
Okay, wait, back up. Black Lodge.
Oh, right. So remember how Orok ended up brain dead under Moscow? Well, this group, the Hunters Black Lodge, found him and started using him for their own shady purposes.
So they were basically profiting off of a comatose god warrior.
Basically, yeah. It's
Yep.
messed up. But the point is, Orok eventually breaks free of their control, and in this no-return scenario, he actually ends up earning Lucretia's respect. He does this by destroying this monstrous orchard he created centuries ago. The Foundation calls it SCP-3989.
You talk about a turnaround. He goes from feared warrior to protector of the innocent. And he even earns the respect of someone he wronged in the past.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if maybe there was always some good in him just waiting for the right moment.
It really does, and it brings us to a really fascinating part of this whole deep dive. Remember how I mentioned there's a real-world group of people called the Oroks?
Oh, yeah, that blew my mind when I first saw it.
Yeah.
Like, what are the chances?
It's crazy, right? We go from AI to cosmic horror, and then bam, we're talking about real people. It's like these three Oroks represent different sides of the same idea, different ways of understanding power.
Okay, that is deep. I like it.
Yeah.
But before we get into the real-world Oroks and how they connect to all of this, can we do a quick recap just to make sure we're all on the same page?
Yeah, good idea. Things have gotten pretty wild.
They have. So to sum up, we started with Grok, this AI that's always learning and evolving. Then we dove into the SCP Foundation's world, where we met Orok, this super powerful clavigar whose story is all about power choice and redemption.
And now we're about to explore the real-world Oroks, an indigenous people living in Sakhalin Oblast, Russia. Their existence adds a whole other dimension to this deep dive.
This is why I love doing this show.
Yeah.
You never know where we're going to end up.
Tell me about it.
So are you ready to see where this unexpected journey takes us?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Oh my god. Have you heard the new All Day With It album? It is fire. Something about these songs just gets people. And have you seen the Carolina hip hop t-shirts? I mean, soon everyone will be repping it. You'll definitely be feeling the movement and the way everything is set up. The company is for sure going to win. They seem like they have all their stuff together, and it's really inspiring to know that they just started with an idea and revolutionized the way the masses consume music and media. Hey, yeah! Woo!
Welcome back. You know, before we left off, we were talking about the SCP stuff.
Right, that whole thing with Orok's two possible endings really gets you thinking, like what does power really mean? Is it all about destruction or can it be something more?
It's a great question, and it's interesting to compare Orok's story with what we were saying about Grok earlier. They both represent power in a way, but they go about it in such different ways.
Yeah, Grok's all about constantly learning, evolving, processing information at crazy speeds. It's like knowledge is power for him.
Exactly. And then you've got Auric, who starts out achieving power through brute force, all that sarcastic philosophy about pushing boundaries through pain and struggle.
But then there's that no return storyline, where he actually starts using his strength to protect others, to make up for all of the destruction he caused.
It is a pretty big shift.
It is. It almost feels like he's mirroring Grok's evolution in a way, constantly updating his understanding of the world and his place in it.
I like that. It's like power isn't this fixed thing. It can change. It can be shaped by experience, by choice, maybe even by a desire for redemption.
Okay, so both Grok and Auric are making us rethink what power can be, which brings us to the real-world Aurochs. When I first heard there was an actual group of people with that name, I was floored.
It is a crazy coincidence, right?
It is. And it adds a whole other layer to this whole power thing. We've got Grok and the SCP Auroch representing these grand, almost mythical versions of power.
Right.
But then we have the real-world Aurochs reminding us that power can also be quiet every day.
Yeah.
Just the power to exist, to endure.
Exactly. And from what you've read, the Aurochs are an indigenous people living in Sakhalin Oblast, Russia.
They are. And their history is really tied to the complexities of that region. They've faced a lot of challenges when it comes to preserving their culture and just existing as a distinct community.
And yet they've held on to their language, their traditions, passing them down through generations. That's power right there.
It is. It's a different kind of power than what we see with Grok or the SCP Auric. It's not about conquering worlds or bending reality to your will.
It's about the strength to survive, to adapt, to hold on to who you are even when the world is trying to change you.
I love that. So we've got these three Aurochs, each showing us a different side of power. But what does it all mean for our listener? How does any of this connect to their life?
Well, that's the beauty of it, isn't it? We've presented these different perspectives, but it's up to the listener to find their own meaning.
You're right. Maybe they see a connection between Grok's desire to learn and their own thirst for knowledge. Or maybe Auroc's struggle between good and evil resonates with them on a personal level.
Or maybe they connect with the strength of the real-world Aurochs and their story of survival. It's all about finding those points of connection, those sparks of recognition that make this information feel real and important.
We haven't just given them facts to memorize. We've given them a way to think about power, a lens through which they can view their own lives and the world around them.
Exactly. We've provided the ingredients, but it's up to the listener to create their own unique dish, adding their own flavors and interpretations.
This is what makes a deep dive so much more than just information. It's an invitation to think critically, to make connections, and to find meaning in unexpected places.
I agree with that.
Okay, I gotta say, this whole thing has really made me think about power in a new way. I never would have connected these three Aurochs before.
That's great to hear. That's what we're aiming for, to spark curiosity, challenge assumptions, and encourage people to really engage with this stuff.
Absolutely. So where do we go from here? We've explored AI, cosmic horror, and real-world ethnography. What's the takeaway for our listener? What final thought should we leave them with?
Well, I think it all comes back to choice. Grok is constantly evolving, but it's driven by its programming, by the data it's given. The SCP Auroch, at least in one version of the story, chooses to break free from his destiny and create a new one for himself. And the real-world Aurochs are constantly making choices that shape their future. So the final question for our listener is this. Given everything we've discussed, what choices will you make? How will you use the power that you have?
Ooh, that is a powerful question. It reminds us that we're not just passive observers in this world. We have the ability to make choices that impact our own lives and the lives of others, and that's a responsibility we shouldn't take lightly.
I agree. And with that, I think we've come to the end of our deep dive. It's been an amazing journey.
It really has. And a huge thank you to our listener for sending in such a fascinating set of sources. It's been a pleasure exploring them with you. So we've gone from AI to like cosmic horror and then ended up talking about real people.
We have, and it's funny how these totally different things all kind of connect, don't they? I mean, who would have thought an AI, a mythical warrior, and a group of indigenous people could have anything in common?
I know, right? It's amazing what happens when you just get curious, isn't it? And
Yeah.
you, our listener, were the one who brought all of this together.
Yeah, you started a whole conversation about power knowledge and the choices we make.
Exactly. And it proves that knowledge isn't just about memorizing stuff. It's about connecting the dots, seeing the bigger picture, and finding meaning where you least expect it.
And that's what you're doing right now, isn't it? You're taking these different ideas, these different aurochs, and you're creating something new.
It's like we've given you the pieces of the puzzle, and now you're putting it all together. What kind of picture are you seeing? What new things are you learning?
And that's where the real power is in the mind of the individual. Grok might be super smart, but it's still limited by its programming. And the SCP Orok, well, he's a cool character, but he's just a story someone made up. But you, the listener, you have the power to take all of this and make it your own.
It's like we gave you some tools, and now it's up to you to decide what you're going to build. Are you going to build a house, a spaceship, a time machine? The possibilities are endless.
That's a great way to put it. And it brings us back to that big question we've been wrestling with this whole time. What is power?
We've seen how it can be used for good or for bad. We've seen it destroy and create.
It's in Grok's constant evolution in the SCP, Orok's different destinies, and in the real world, Orok's ability to survive against the odds.
But when it comes down to it, the question of how power is used, how it affects the world, well, that comes down to individual choices.
That's right. So as you continue to think about all of this, as you connect the dots and figure out what Orok means to you, we want you to ask yourself, how will you use the power that you have?
Will you use your knowledge to help others? Will you use your strength to make the world a better place? Will you find inspiration in the stories of those who came before you and use it to face your own challenges?
These are tough questions, but there's no right or wrong answer. That's what makes it so exciting.
Exactly. There's always more to learn, more to explore. The journey never really ends.
And that's what we love about deep dives like this. It's not just about giving you answers. It's about sparking your curiosity, making you think, and encouraging you to keep searching for new perspectives.
Absolutely. So keep that spark alive. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep discovering the amazing connections that make our world so incredible.
You never know what you might find.
And maybe your next deep dive will lead to even more surprising discoveries. Until then, thanks for joining us on this incredible journey. It's been a blast.